This is the last of the series of working with this bottle, Caroline Herrera, this shoe bottle. I have three other tutorials on building these parts. We have the front part, which is the glass. Then we have the back here, injection molded plastic, the actuator and the button. And then we have the heel part, which is that gold molded part that has the flutes in it. So if you haven't seen those, I have tutorials on how to build those parts. So this tutorial is going to be about rendering and working with some of the lighting features and creating a glass wall. So that's what I'm going to start with. This front part is glass, and I'm going to be imitating the red version. There's many versions of this. So for example, if you were to render this and it won't be in glass, then we're all set. All we have to do is take this and assign materials to it. They have some that are gold and different colors, and some of the glass is actually tinted. So you don't see through the glass, but you get a very shiny reflective surface. So this particular one is going to have the glass in clear, and then I'm going to have another solid on the inside, which is going to represent the red. So I have a feeling what they did was they molded a glass bottle and then they tinted or actually painted the inside of the glass. So you get the clear on the outside. It's a nice effect and it looks quite beautiful. I think that's how they did it. I'm not sure. So what I'm going to do here to imitate that is I'm going to make a solid that's inside of a walled glass part. And I'm going to have that float in and not touch the wall. Because if I do it and I have it touching the wall, then the whole part will look red. It's sort of what happens in 3D. In reality, it does sort of happen, but here, for our rendering purposes, we need to make sure that we have that solid on the inside, not touching the outside. So I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. So I have that set up down here. I'm also setting this up and preparing it for so if I do any other renderings where I might have a clear tinted glass piece on the outside, and then I have another like juice or the actual perfume on the inside. So this will work for that for future renderings. So I'm going to try to do both here at the same time. Okay, so let's turn this off. So this I have right here. This is the glass part that we built. So I have that all ready to go. I radiused that front edge because I know we're going to need that for the renderings. There's also going to be a radius back here, which I haven't done yet. Um, it can go either way. Sometimes I wait to do those radiuses because if I create a shell with a wall, sometimes the calculations don't work. If I have a radius out here and I'm going to put a wall and that radius goes to 0 or less than the radius to the inside, sometimes it doesn't quite work. So I wanted to check that, but it seems to be okay here. So it's working. So those are just a couple of variations on how to do this. So I'm going to take this and shell this. So if we go to our solid tools, over here, we have a tool called Shell Close Polysurface. So if we select that, what it wants us to do is remove one face. This is actually quite convenient for bottle designs because usually when we sculpt a bottle, we want to open up the finish at the very top of the bottle so we can make a perfect solid and do all our details. And then all we have to do is select that top little round area at the finish, and then we can create a wall. So that's going to work really efficiently for this. So by doing this, it wants us to pick a surface. But what we want to do first is pick the thickness. So I'm going to click on thickness here, and I'm going to make a 60 thousandths wall. So that's a 0.06. So in inches, that's 16th of an inch. Millimeters, it's, I don't know, like 2 or 3 millimeters. It's pretty small. Probably about, yeah, maybe about 2 millimeters. So once I have that set, then I'm going to press enter. So now I'm back to selecting this face. So I'm going to remove this face here at the top because this is where my finish would be. I'm not going to build the detail finish. A finish means the edge of the bottle, where the thread pattern might be, or the snap detail. I'm just going to do this just for rendering purposes and leave that alone. So I'm going to select this surface here, and I have my wall thickness ready to go. So all I have to do is press enter, and it will remove that surface, but you can see it created this wall. So now this whole part is still a solid, but it's been shelled. So that wall goes all the way through the entire part. So you can see the radius worked out well here. So the radius on the outside held, but it came to a sharp corner on the inside because this wall made the radius go away as it diminished in. and it held up well. So what I'll probably do is just radius this back corner here. I have plenty of room here, so I can put a nice generous radius back there. And the reason I would do that is for the rendering purposes, to get the light to hit that correctly. So now this will be my glass part. So when I render it, I will put a glass material to that and we'll have a nice wall thickness. What I want to do is create another three-dimensional solid in here that does not touch that wall. It's slightly in from that, but it's the exact same shape. So I'm going to take the same part that I had that I used to create that. I'm going to shell this, but I'm going to shell this thicker and difference it from another part so I can end up with the center at a smaller distance than this. So let's hope I can make this clear. So now I'm going to, instead of the 60, I'm going to go to, I think I'm going to go to 90 point and then enter. So now you can see this wall is thicker than that one. So I'm going to take this piece and I created this block over here. It's just a solid. Then I'm going to float this piece in the center of that. So let's take a look at that in wireframe. So I have this piece that I just created here. I have it over here. It's sitting inside of this block. Now, if I look at this from the front view, you can see the reason I cut this angle off here is I want the solid from our glass piece sticking up just slightly because I want to difference that from this block and I want to take that inside piece, that remaining piece, and use that for that solid piece on the inside. So if I come over here, all I did was I differenced this from the block. And then what that did, okay, here's the block. Now it has the outside wall of the glass is inside there, and I removed that. But the part I want is this piece in the center that's floating, that's remaining. So if I take this and delete that, this is the part I want. So now that is a solid and is exactly 30, whatever it is, it's smaller, 30 thousandths smaller than the inside wall of our glass. So I can take that and float that on the inside of that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that red and put a nice reflective surface on it. And I'm going to make that clear for our rendering. So I hope that was clear. I've done wall thicknesses and shrinking parts for all these different glass tutorials. Sometimes you can just shrink the part or just reduce it down. Here, I can't do that because it's a much more complicated part. I couldn't just scale it down. I had to difference it and make the wall come in. So that needed to happen for this particular one. So that's how I created the inside. So as far as building, that's all we're really doing right now. So the rest of this is going to be about rendering. So what I'm going to do is set up a perspective and save it. I think this is a good idea because we're going to be doing a lot of things. We're going to be moving things around. I'm going to be adding some lighting, doing some background, putting the logo on it, and selecting parts. So when you do all that, you're constantly moving it around. So it's nice to start off. I think I like doing this, picking your point of view. So you navigate, look around. I have it set in perspective, kind of pick this. I'm looking at the heel. Maybe I want a little space here. I'm looking at a lot of the professional photographs of this bottle and see how they like to show that. Quite often they'll show it from a really low angle like this, looking up at it, which is quite dramatic. And that's kind of nice. I tipped mine down a little bit so I could see a little bit more at the top of the actuator, see a little of the logo, and then have a little space between the heel and the back of the shoe right in here. So all of that being said, what we can do is you can save that point of view. So if you come under this little blue area here where it says perspective, I can select all of this, and within here I have a place called set view. So if you come down here, I have perspective 1 and I have perspective 2. So when you first come in here, this will be empty, but you can click on named views. So if you click on named views, you can then go up here to this little camera with a plus sign, and you can say save as, and you can give it a name and save it. And it'll save them all in here. You can go back to these and reference them or change them or delete them or move them, whatever you want to do. So I'm going to cancel that. And I have these set up. So if we go back to Here, you don't have to go in there every time. We can go to set view, and let's say I'm going to select perspective 2, and it'll set this right to that. So this is all ready to go. I like how that's sitting, and that's my perspective. So I think that's a good idea to do that first with this kind of workflow. So now we can start talking about some of the details. So we're going to do some materials. And we have our materials tab right here. This is toggle materials panel. So if we open that up, I have a lot of these set up already. So for glass, here's clear glass. I'll just show you where to get some of these. I'm going to right click in space right here, and it says import from material library. And there's a whole set of different folders of different setups here. So this is under glass. And what I've been using is just plain clear glass. Some of these are set up. There's a whole series of frosted versions. Some are tinted with color. Some have less reflectivity. Some imitating plexiglass and other types of materials. But I'm just going to go to clear glass. I don't need to do that right now because I already have that set up. And that's all I did here. If you click on clear glass, I think I have the clarity pretty high. Uh, And it's the same thing for these other materials. When we brought the glass in, there's metal. I think I only used metal and glass, and I might have used plastic. So once we have the materials in here, all we have to do is select the material. Actually, let's select a part. So let's say this part back here, I'm going to make that black. So what we would do is select this material, right click, and at the top of the list it says assign to objects. We can also drag, click on this little icon here and just drag it over to the part and it'll make it that color. So that's how we set up the different colors in here. And I did that for the gold and the heel and the back. I tried a couple of different golds here and played with some of the reflectivity and how polished it is and things like that. And I'll show a little bit more about how that works when we start working with the lighting. So that's bringing in the materials. The other part here is the logo in the front, which I've done before, so I'll do that quickly. So I'm going to look at this from the front view. And let's go back to, um, let's do rendered. So I have my materials in here, Ray. So here's the logo. So I found this on the web and I just kind of tightened it up a little bit. So I created the logo and made a PNG out of it. And I just created a rectilinear shape here. So let's go into shaded so we can see that. Shaded. So I just have a rectangle here and I just did it like a white material, whatever it might be. It doesn't really matter that much. But again, since we have this and I want this to be an invisible background on a clear bottle, we cannot do that with the decal. The decal will make the background of the art, since it's a PNG, disappear, but we will see the material of this rectangle. We don't want that. We want the rectangle material to go away and we want to see the bottle. So we need to do that with a texture map. So I took the logo, I think I have it here, the logo in here. I brought the logo in as a PNG. And in the material dialog, I'm just going to right click on this and drag that over and put that on here. And it will function as the color because it'll be texture mapped with one repeat pattern. So it just sits on there. And then since it's a PNG, then the background of that white material goes away and we're looking right through to the bottle. Okay, so that's putting the logo on. And we have our materials set up. Okay, so let's just set that perspective again. We're gonna make sure it's the right view. Set view, perspective 2. Okay, there it is. Okay, excellent. So that's the start of that. We have the logo in position. So I'm going to just go into rendered, We can just take a look at it. So here they are. So right now you can't see the glass because I have that very, very clear. You can barely see it. It's just coming around here, but it's sitting there's the glass. And then we have the centerpiece in here. So I'm going to take a look at some of the material characteristics here, and we're going to take a look at some of the lighting and how that works. Everything relates to one another, and the point of view is also critical. And I'm going to demonstrate adding a light source to see what that does to how this is going to work. So for testing rendering, so this is rendered mode. It's okay. We use that a lot for our screen captures with graphics. It works pretty well for some situations, but when we get involved with metallics and clear materials, it doesn't work really well. So one way to do that, we can go right into rendered, and that'll take some time depending on how the settings work. But one way to do this relatively quickly is in this dialog box for this portal here, we have all these other options. So down in here, we have ray traced, which is going to imitate what the rendering will look like. So I'm going to click ray traced, and it's going to, and I have it set on only 10 cycles. I think when we first come in here, this might be set on like 100 cycles. So doing 10, that's quick. So now it's ready. So we have a preview of what this might look like. So I've been experimenting with some of the settings here, and I'll show you what I did. I have this to a certain point where it looks pretty interesting. Where it looks like we have this nice clear glass piece over the red, and we see a lot of the edges. The logo looks beautiful up in here. I have a reflector on the black, so that looks really nice in the back. And then we have the gold that's sort of showing a little bit of our rib pattern on the heel. So those are the materials that I had brought in. So I'm going to demonstrate a couple of the variations on that. So I'm going to leave this in this ray traced mode as I make some of these changes. So the big thing was the red. Let's go in here. I'm going to click on this red material. Right now I have it on metal. Before, when I started, I did it with plastic. I think it was plastic or even paint. Both of them are very similar. Let's try paint. And I have it 100% gloss. So as you can see, it's a bit paler. We're losing some of those dark, deep, reflective edges, which kind of causes it to flatten out slightly. It's not bad. It looks pretty good, but I was not happy with that. Looking at some of the photographs of the bottle, it looked like there was much more deeper, richer reflections. So that was one change that I made, which I thought was really, really helpful to get rid of this kind of this flatness on here. So let's go back to metal on that. Metal. And you can see it'll update right away. Oh, wow. Oh, it's the polished. Since I went back to the metal, I think what I did was I reduced those really black areas. That's a little bit too much. I think I had it down to, I can't remember. So this is the amount of polish that it has. I think I had it way down here, maybe. Okay, here. So we still have some of those nice dark areas. It's a little bit, still a little bit much. It's not bad. It looks pretty good. I was going to bring that down just a little bit more. So this is why picking a point of view when we start playing with these materials, because it's going to be the reflectivity relative to our lighting and our environment, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So the same thing with the gold. I picked a gold color and I played with the reflectivity and I added a little bit of a tint to that. So if we look at that, you can see I added a little bit of kind of a gold color and play with how intense that was going to be. And then the roughness, I backed off slightly so we can get a nice kind of reflection back there with enough of the color and the tint to get that to work. On the black was the same thing. See, yeah, I went to metal on the black so I can get some really nice dark blacks and then get some reflectivity in the back here. So a lot of this is done with a light source that I had created. So let's take a look at that. This is looking pretty good. I'm just going to go back into rendered so I don't have to keep ray tracing. Go to properties and maybe just go to shaded. I have this rectangular piece here. Now that is a light source, and I'll show you how I did that. So if you go with your rendering tools on, there's different kinds of lights here. A very simple one to get started with is a rectangular light source. So all that is a rectangle. So if I look at this from front view, and we go to shaded, with the rectangular tool selected, see I have it here in green, all we really have to do is just make a rectangle like this, and then that's it. That is now going to project light. So let's click on that, and it has this little center dot in the middle. So if we go into perspective, you can see it's like a little arrow. That little arrow is saying which way the light is directing. Like if I flip this around, the light would be going completely opposite direction. So that's how you create that. And you can now manipulate that. You can rotate it, put it wherever you want, hinge it, put it up top. You have to play with that and see how that's going to go. So what I did was I wanted to create some backlighting. Like if this is my perspective, I have the light over here to the right shining sort of into the back. I wanted to catch this back edge of the glass and the red and then have it go into the gold heel and the reflection. So that just comes from photography. That's why it's so good that you guys are going to the photo studio and you're starting to photograph your mock-ups. And you're taking a look at what shadows are like and what backlighting is. It's great because that'll be really helpful in doing this. Working in a photo studio is very similar to doing renderings in a 3D program. So I have that. Let's just go top view. I can show you where I have that. So I have that off to this one side right here. My point of view is coming in this direction. So I have a little bit of this backlighting just to show some of that contouring that's going on in the shape. So let's go back to, I want to go back to my set view here. And you can see this little green line is my light. So I have that selected and I have that on. So let's go back to, and I'm going to show you what happens when I turn that off. Go back to ray traced. So that backlighting is creating this little highlight right here because this part of the shoe does curve around to the back. And with just the regular lighting, we kind of lost a little bit of that curve. So I want to keep that lit. So I'm going to turn this off so we can see how that might change a little. It's going to be subtle. And some of the highlights on the closure here that are coming from the back and then even from the gold will change a little. So I have the that light panel selected, and here's the dialog box. I can change the color, I can change the intensity and the shadow. And I think I actually brought the shadow down also, but let's just see what happens when I turn this off. You can see I lost some of that backlighting right here along the edge of the shoe. A little bit of it's there, and then some of the lighting on the closure went away. So I'm losing some of the detail in there. It's pretty subtle, but it does help quite a bit. So let's turn that back on again. You can see how that's coming in there. So let's just play with this shadow here for a second. I think I did a little bit of this. I just brought the shadow down slightly. Okay, so it adds a little bit of contouring variation there, not very much. We also have some fall off variations, constant, where it's just a nice even light source that's coming in there. And then we have linear. If we watch the reflection, especially in the red, we can really see how this is going to work. I'm not sure technically exactly what's happening with these qualities. Like how light that is now. That doesn't look very nice to me. It's a little bit too bright. So let's take a look at inverse squared, whatever that means. So that's not much different. We get a little bit of this in between value here. I think I might go back to what we had, the constant. I thought that looked the best. And then I might even go back to my red color with the metal. Let me see what this looks like again, if I can remember. Yeah, I think I'd like to have a little bit more darkness in here. So I might change that with the metal reflector. So if we go back to materials, go back to my red, and I'm going to make that just a little shinier. And I should be able to get some more richer reflections in here. Let's see how that looks. Yes, we're getting a little bit more of this darkness in here. So I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so that's that. It's a matter of going back and forth and then playing with that. So the another part of this is our rendering environment. So over here on the right-hand side, we have all our tools, this little spherical shape. I think it has a little arrow spinning around there. This is setting up the environment. This is also very critical. All of these things relate to one another, so they all happen at the same time. I'm just breaking it down and showing you in different stages. So under background, what I'm going to do instead of a solid color and a gradient, which we were doing before, I'm going to use a environment, a 360-degree environment, and I have a Rhino Studio. So these are set up with different backgrounds because when you get involved with reflective surfaces, it's all about what's in the environment. That's what our object is reflecting. That's what makes it look interesting. So let's just go to rendered so I can move this around a little more easily. So with that selected, I'm just going to show you what happens is it has sort of this dark roof area and kind of a gradation from the ceiling down, but then it has all these different lights at the top here. And it doesn't move. And that is what's shining down on our part. So that environment is what I'm seeing behind here. So we're not really, it doesn't have like furniture and a whole bunch of different things behind it. It's a pretty simple layout. So I like using that. Um, but what I'm using for the environment reflections is Gem Studio. So this is what's actually reflecting into the part. It's a little confusing because all of these things are kind of interrelated. So by using custom environment for reflections, that's what's making this shine the way it is. And I'm using something called Gem Studio. I think originally I used something else. The Gem Studio is working really well with these ribs. So let's just go to something else to show the difference. I think Plain Studio is pretty kind of neutral. I just went to Plain Studio. See how I lost all that detail in these ribs? It kind of died, and a lot of the reflections are missing. I know I don't have the glass set up, um, but that's did not work as well. When I turn it, I can see it, but I liked how Gem Studio worked. This is all trial and error. So I'm going to click on that again, and there it is. So when you want to get these backgrounds, these environments, do the drop-down menu and go to plus, and then we can import from a library. So here's a library of all these different things. They have unusual names, but you have to experiment with them. And some of them are quite robust. They have like furniture and windows and plants and things and a whole bunch of environment parts in there, and that can reflect into your object. So this is a bit of a trial and error. Once you do it for a while, you'll get a feel for a couple of these that you might like. So that's how you get those. So I'm using a Rhino Studio 8 for my 3D environment, which is basically nothing. It's just kind of clear here and just has some nice lighting. And then the gemstone, the Gem Studio is what really helped with these reflections. So all of that, plus that light panel that I created, and the details on the material that I use. I'm using metal instead of plastic and all that. All of those things play with one another, and that's how we get these renderings to work. So another thing I'm going to demonstrate here is a background. So let's just go back into my layers, and I want to show how this is going to work. Let's go into shaded. I have a layer here called background. So I created this um, panel. So all that is a surface from the top view. And go to Surface Tools, and I'm going to select Surface. This is like creating a seamless background that we have in our photo studio. In the photo studio, you've got like a piece of paper and it's a color and it kind of curves. They call it seamless because you curve it up the back so you don't see the corner of a table or a room. It's all kind of one neutral background. And then depending on how you light it or what color it is, you get that kind of nice, beautiful, neutral background. And they refer to that as seamless. So if I look at this panel from the front view, this one I just created over here, we can go to our transform tools, and we have this one right here called bend. So if we come over here and we select the object here, and then you select, I'm going to turn ortho off, and then you select another point to bend from, you can just take this and you can curve this up in the air like this, and then you select, and now you have bent that surface. Let's go into perspective. And that's the one I just bent. So you can make that a material. So I'm just creating my own seamless and putting that in the back, and I'm going to put a color on that. Delete. So you can see how I wanted to orient that around my shoe because I have my perfect point of view. I have all my lights set up and in my environment, so I do not want to disrupt that. So it's much easier to move the panel around. So I move the panel in such a way that when I put my camera angle on it, it will be where I want it to be. So let's go back to my point of view. Set view. I'm going to go to 2. So that's it in the background there. We're seeing a little bit in the corner here, but I'm probably going to end up cropping this down anyhow. So you can do this with any kind of material you want. I just made this the same red reflector that I did on the shoe part, just to make it kind of, because this branding is all about this color and this beautiful drama. So this I think would be appropriate for doing this. So I'm going to go to ray traced. Again, this is only 10 cycles, which is pretty simple, but look at that. It's absolutely stunning. It's quite beautiful. So even the red background is reflecting into the gold. So the gold is still gold, but it has a little bit of a reddish tint too because of reflectivity. So it looks quite nice. I like the backlighting on the shoe from that light that we had set up. It really makes that come around the corner there. And then the lights and darks. So it looks quite nice. The black looks great. We can see the actuator because we made that little radius in there so we can see all these parts. So the reason the reflection on the red is sort of random like that is because I have it in that gem environment. Let's just go back to that for a second. Gem Studio that has many lights. I think it had like 9 or so lights in the ceiling. So you get a lot of these kind of random reflections. But I think it looks really, really nice. And the reflectivity on that red is reflecting down from the product down into the bottom there. So that's that's a beautiful image. So I have multiple screen captures and renderings that I did of this. So I'll show that in class with some of the nuances and the variations that we changed. Okay, so that's rendering this bottle.